Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video, I thought because SDCC is right around the corner, we would go back and revisit the San Diego Comic-Con 2011 DC Universe Classics Swamp Thing. One of my all-time favorite DC Universe Classic figures. He was released again at the San Diego Comic-Con. Let's get some dimensions going for this whopping sized Swamp Thing. He stands actually at about 9 3/4 inches, close to actually about 10 inches. He is one of the tallest, if you think of it, one of the tallest standalone figures, not counting the collect and connect figures. Just to give you guys a size comparison of exactly how tall this Swamp Thing is, let's bring in Black Cowl Batman. There's now that's a standard sized DC Universe figure. So he stands at about 6.5 inches tall. So you can see how much taller Swamp Thing is to Batman. Another comparison we can make of the sizing here, we just recently had a look at the Collect and Connect Bane, which is not really one of the tallest Collect and Connect figures, but he's certainly much taller than Batman here. You can see how much taller Swamp Thing is to the smaller sized Bane and smaller sized, even still, Batman. So here are some of the things that would have come with Swamp Thing: a personal journal, property of Dr. Alec Holland. You can open that up. It's it's slightly bent, just the way I've stored this away, but it has some of the doctor's notes. And there's actually an image there even of the figure itself of Swamp Thing. A nice little added piece. One of the beautiful things of getting the San Diego Comic-Con exclusives is they always give you extra stuff. You know, not only just extra exclusives, but they also give you extra packaging items too, like whether the packaging is just... And unfortunately, I don't have the packaging for this guy anymore. I kind of wish that I did because it was really cool packaging. You can also even go back and look at my previous video. A little dated, yes, but you can also go back and have a look at see how he originally was packaged. By the way, the original review of this guy I did way back in June 19th, 2012. So it was actually a day before my birthday, and it was 5 years ago, so a long time ago. Let's have a look at the display stand that comes or would have come with Swamp Thing here. Kind of a swampy, grassy area here with some vines, some broken off shards, broken off areas, and trunks of trees. Painted very nicely. There's one singular skull and what looks to be like a spinal, actual spine section of your bone there. It looks great. I mean, like a nice accompanying piece of Swamp Thing. It's about the same coloring as him as well. And there's the underside of it. A couple of the exclusives as well were the two Unmen. You got two of these. This guy always reminds me of Krang. I think it's a pretty safe sort of lead off as to why I would have probably thought that. You know, with the fact that the lower half is a hand, but it kind of does look like the little legs of Krang, and of course the face and coloring looks very much like Krang as well. It's just like a giant brain, which is pretty cool. And then the other one is more like a serpent, or like an eel, kind of like an eel with legs. And they're both kind of soft rubber, so there's a little bit of playability going there. They're not like a dense plastic or anything like that. But some great dark colors added in there too, so it's not just the lighter purples. They've added some nice lighter violet in there as well, just to make some of those cool little slimy details pop. Okay, we'll put that over there. And then, of course, then you've got Swamp Thing. Now, Swamp Thing, again, other than just being a towering figure, one of the other things that makes this guy so unique versus the other DC Universe figures is the fact that he has a rubber exterior. This whole area is all rubber. Rubber from the head, well, rubber from the head, I guess it's more plastic, but basically rubber from the neck all the way down to the feet. You can even see how the feet, yeah, they are completely rubber. I'm not certain. There was a viewer that had asked me back in the day, can't remember who it was, unfortunately, but had asked me at one point, they were thinking about picking up the SDCC Swamp Thing, and had asked me if the rubber had held out. You know, because one of the problems with anything that's rubber starts deteriorating over the course of time. The clay face that I have has started to get a little, not crumbly, but it's starting to get a little frayed on the edges of the rubber. Swamp Thing, on the other hand, seems to have still held up pretty good. To be fair, though, I've been packaging this guy away in a tote in a dark area, not around exposed to sunlight. So something like having this guy on display around a hot light source, like if you have him by the window or something like that, you might not start noticing that the rubber starts drying itself out. So far, so good. He has held up pretty good. But if I was to eventually display this guy, which I really would like to, I would favor putting this guy in like a basement or someplace that's dry but is not excessively hot and sunny. Let's have a look at his face. We'll just bring the camera up and we'll just zoom in here. Like, again, the face is really nice. It's got all these little little indentations running all across his body. The face is done really nice, and I love the vibrant red eyes that they've incorporated into him. The vines do a great work of adding some extra detail, so obviously if the vines were completely left off, you would miss one of the trademark elements of Swamp Thing, and that's this kind of triangular piece, which seems to make many appearances on Swamp Thing, but it's a slight triangular piece that runs around the bridge or the lower point of his nose all the way down, and it divides the mouth from the rest of the face, which is something I always really liked about Swamp Thing. His nose is there, but it's more the indication of like little slots than anything else. And then, of course, the majority of the figure, other than that green, they've added some dark green to bring out some of those added little details, but they've also run vines basically all over this guy, all over the torso, all over the arms, and of course all over the legs. And then you've got some nice little accents here of things such as like toadstools, mushrooms and stuff like that, like just fungus growing all over his body. He's got some nice little extra things going up here. They almost looks like rooted vegetables starting to grow on the shoulder portion here of Swamp Thing. Again, some more toadstools and funguses and stuff like that growing all over his body. Really, paint elevates this guy much, much more than if they had just made this guy all green. Even incorporating the dark green really goes a long way for this figure to make this guy absolutely shine. Now, one of the downsides to the figure, being that he is rubber, is he is slightly limited. I say slightly, I mean, I'm kind of being fair to this guy. He is very limited. Let's run through his posability right now. His head is on a ball joint, so that's actually one of the more posable aspects of the figure. His head does rotate, will hinge up and down. Again, it'll rotate all the way around. His arms hinge outward, and for that matter, you can forward and back motion on them, but they get very stuck very quickly. Bringing the arms back to about even there, they already start hitting resistance with all the extra sculpt that they've put there. His elbow bends, and see if I can show you here. It bends, and it bends to really only about that. I know it's almost not even worth it, but it does bend. It bends very, very slightly, and that's about all you're really going to get. The hands, I've never really entertained the idea of bending the hands. You can see that the fingers are just rubber as well, so holding things can be very difficult for Swamp Thing. But there doesn't feel like there's any sort of posability, basically from the forearm area, from basically like the elbow down to the fingertips. It just feels like it's just one solid sculpt. I would say that there is a torso crunch, but again, incorporating all of that underneath a rubber skin makes this guy very problematic for bending stuff. And the last thing you want to do is put too much resistance where you might hear a inside, and then you know something's broke inside Swamp Thing. The plus, I suppose, is if something does break inside Swamp Thing, you really wouldn't be able to fix it, but also the rubber skin would kind of keep everything together. Kind of just like a bandage would kind of keep everything together for him. His legs do rotate forward and back. That's one thing that you will notice. When you rotate him forward, sometimes his leg does pop out of the socket. There is that hinge as well on the figures. You can tell I'm really being really careful with this guy because I've had him for a fairly long period of time, and I certainly don't want anything happening to him. He does have a bend at the knee, and I'm just doing this up to the camera so you can hear it. Can you hear that little kind of clicking? That would be the joint inside the rubber frame. For his feet are basically the same as his hands. That doesn't seem like, well, there's a little bit of an ankle pivot right there. A lot more actually than what I was expecting. And again, you can kind of hear that clickety-click, barb a trick, back and forth on the feet. And there's the underside of the feet where they've actually sculpted footprints like an actual foot, which is nice. Again, these are just rubbery. A great figure though. My only negative really, other than the fact that they used the medium that they used, I guess they could have used this guy as plastic, but he's kind of like the equivalent of Moss Man or a Masters of the Universe figure. The draw to him is the fact that he is made out of rubber. And I guess based on that, he does have an appeal to him. They could have easily done him in plastic, but kind of like the Moss Man figures or someone that's flocked. The flocking makes the character unique or makes the figure unique. In Swamp Thing's case, I think making him rubber, though I'm apprehensive about the fact that he is rubber, and Clayface I kind of wish was plastic. I think Swamp Thing works better as rubber than Clayface works having rubber arms. I wish that he was completely plastic. One of the other things I wish is that he wasn't as tall. Again, comparing him next to Batman, he's towering over Batman. Swamp Thing could have easily been up to maybe about where his pecs are, about that height for a figure, and he would have been completely serviceable as a figure on display. He unfortunately kind of, through the process of just being so tall and so large, really in size, that he looks a little out of place when you display him with other DC Universe figures. If you can overlook that part of it, he's a great looking figure, beautifully sculpted. The rubber, it grows on you. I mean, initially I'm thinking, I don't know, rubber on a figure, but it does work. I'm actually more bothered by the fact that he's so much taller than another DC Universe figure than I am the material that they used for him. Still a great looking figure. You could probably find him now in aftermarket. I couldn't honestly tell you how much he is right now, but I would say pick him up if you want something unique for your collection. Swamp Thing definitely is unique. Today we were doing a throwback, a revisit of one of the reviews that I did back in 2012. 5 years ago, we were having a look at the SDCC, San Diego Comic-Con 2011 DC Universe Swamp Thing. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to this channel, what are you waiting for? Hit that little subscribe button down below, and you won't miss any future videos hitting this channel. If you also are in favor of watching more DC Universe figures, that's perfect. There's a playlist there for you where you can go back, and including this guy, when I first did the review of him. You want to see what his package looked like? No, not that. If you want to look at what his box looked like, you can go back to 2012 and watch my original video of him. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you next time.